Evelyn, I think the trouble here, and you can be critical of the way Trump handled that. I don't think anyone was particularly gracious in that circumstance. But the issue is that Russia is not losing this war at this state of the game. And in order to negotiate some kind of end to this war, both sides have to cede some ground somewhere. And Zelenskyy, for obvious reasons, morally doesn't want to do that. He wants it to come with entry to NATO, etc. He doesn't want to hand land over to Russia. Morally, you can understand why that would be the case. But if there are not concessions on both ends, there will not be an end to this war.
Well, it's interesting. If you look statistically speaking, there have been over 1.5 million deaths between Russia and Ukraine. That's the most deaths that we've seen since the 50s in any kind of war. So I guess the question we have to ask at this point in time is, what's the magic number? What's the magic number of deaths of people before Zelenskyy says, OK, that's enough death, now I'll sign something, a peace agreement? I mean, two things can be true at once, right? And I think we often forget that in times of war. It's very tit for tat, team Ukraine or team Russia. But in this situation, two things can be true at once. Sure, like in an ideal world, should this be happening? No, that's true. However, what's the alternative? How many more people are going to be slaughtered? There are video footage of Ukrainian nationals being dragged off the street, forced to fight in a war that they don't even want to fight anymore. The Ukrainian people have said, enough is enough. You only have to have a look at the footage coming out and speak to an actual Ukrainian to know that they've had enough of this war themselves. They've had enough of their sons and their daughters dying at some war that could have been prevented a very long time ago. I'm sorry, but Zelenskyy has had billions of dollars funneled into his country, especially from America. It's over $120 billion. And he came across in that meeting like an ungrateful toddler. He walked into it thinking, I saw this on Twitter, I won't take the credit for it, but he walked into that meeting thinking he was Netanyahu, and he walked out realising he was Justin Trudeau. That's basically the vibe of what was happening in this meeting. And to be honest, I think absolute full credit to Donald Trump. He's doing exactly what his election promise was, which was putting America first. And on top of that, still trying to honour whatever agreement Biden had made with Zelenskyy and trying to do his best to have peace. And I think at this point in time, everybody across the world, especially Ukrainian mothers and fathers and families who their kids are dying, everybody at this point in time wants to see peace. Even if it might not be the most ideal thing, the alternative is even worse than that.
And I think it's two things can be true at once. You've got to acknowledge, Freya, that Russia started this war. There is no doubt about that. They have, in the process of that, taken land. But I think the reality is that you can't just return all of that land to Ukraine and expect this war to end. As unfortunate as that might be, that's just the reality of how this is going to play out.
Yeah, well, I think there are a few factors going on here. Firstly, we've got to note Russia is not winning this war. Neither side are winning this war. And so I don't think Russia is as strong as, we think.
I think they're stronger than we think, to be honest.
I think Ukraine is struggling, but Russia is not winning. They have incurred enormous cost as well. And I think the challenge that the line Trump is trying to walk is, I think, obviously we all want to contain Russia. We do not want to see a authoritarian power expanding across Europe. But the other factor that he's probably considering on the other side is Russia, while they are isolated on the global stage, will feel pushed closer to China. And we're already seeing that. China is now behaving as the senior partner in the relationship and dictating to Russia kind of what to do. And that's actually a very dangerous place for us to be. And if you notice that one comment Trump made during the meeting, he said, "You are gambling with World War III." And I think those are the stakes we're reaching now, where that sort of merging of Iran, Russia, China into this very tight bond does present an extremely dangerous challenge to the Western world. And I would also say that, so that's kind of the tension that Trump is trying to walk here. But I also think the blame should totally as well be placed on the European powers, who have been essentially asleep
Americans,
for the
to
last
be honest.
60 years. Well, America has been single-handedly holding up the global international order. But I think under the Trump administration, it's very clear that that is over. And that is a lesson that Australia needs to heed very closely, because gone are the days when we can just expect America to ride in on their white horse and save us. Trump has made it very clear we must all fend for ourselves. The US will keep us all together, hopefully, but it's actually in everyone's interest that all Western powers increase defence spending and rapidly ramp up our defence capabilities.
And this is what Trump has talked about this extensively when it comes to NATO and the money that other nations pour into it. And that's part of the reason there is tension about Ukraine entering NATO, because if you invade or attack a NATO country, effectively the rest of NATO has to get involved in that war. And that's one of the ways you end up with a world war.